Good afternoon and welcome to the Delivering Innovation for Telco Transformation Interactive webinar presented by Total Telecom in partnership with Intel. This is the 5G and communications track, and on our panel we will be discussing topics including 5G architecture, spectrum, enterprise solutions, supply chains and scalable networks. The panel will be moderated by Tony Lavender, partner at Plum Consulting. Towards the end of the session there will be an opportunity for Q&A, and you can use Zoom's inbuilt Q&A function to submit your questions to the panel at any time. First up, we have some brief opening comments from Daniel Lynch, Segment Marketing Director at Intel. Over to you, Daniel.
Dan, thank you. Just share my screen. So I'll just keep it on this slide. So guys, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Many thanks for your time and for my fellow panelists today. Quite a nice mix of backgrounds and expertise to talk about 5G today. So just tee it up, and we'll hand over then to Tony for intros and walk through the topics and set the scene from an Intel perspective. So my role is I focus in on virtualization of the radio access network. And as we look at the network and our journey to date and 5G going forward, we very much view it as yes, there is a degree of virtualization coming into the various different network elements, and there's value for supply chain disaggregation, but 5G is really about more than just the connectivity to a cell phone device. You know, we definitely view the significant emergence of the edge as a big market for us at Intel, and a great opportunity for everybody in the supply chain to realize new opportunities. And I think that from the outset, some of the early data, you see this 75% data point from Gartner, for a while now, really talks to the shift from where data will be produced outside of your traditional cloud and data center environments. So from around about 10% today to 75%, it's a huge amount of new data. And where does all that data be pushed to be consumed and processed? And you know, you obviously can't have big CPUs on all these tiny devices to go and process information. They can't store it, they can't process it, they just send it up somewhere. Where to and where do you process it, and how fast is that that answer and that direction need to come? And that's where this big investment across the entire market is coming in focusing on edge. So then we think about you know, the emergence of edge. There's a big opportunity, brand, you know, very new device, very diverse devices being deployed, very different types of services that need to be rolled out and managed and delivered to the market. So how is the market reacting to it? And this is probably the kind of the view of the journey from our perspective. You know, we with Intel, certainly in the RAN, you know, in that closed box platform, super high performance, incredibly efficient, purpose-built hardware platforms, that the radio access network is still one of the big network nodes. That's the kind of more very much the mainstream solution. And we sell a lot of silicon in that market. We've got great partnerships with the leading players in that market, and you know, RAN and the other parts of the network, you know, has been going through this long evolution to be you know, cloud ready, introduction of the NFV and SDN, and allow that the hardware software disaggregation. That's good, and that's clearly happening. I see some of the leading lights like Rakuten, Verizon, Telefonica, Dish, and Vodafone, to name but a few of major operators who are saying, oh yeah, that we're doing that. We're moving towards a cloud architecture. So some, for example, Rakuten from the outset, just pure cloud native from the get-go. Others making that transformation. But then if we and that's kind of right now still in a space of providing connectivity to a device, a cell phone device, in terms of fixed wireless access, obviously to a home, but primarily just a same service, just done better, more throughput, better network efficiency through 5G. It's now that next phase from 2020 to 25 is where I think true cloud native, additional new services, new platforms need to be enabled within the network infrastructure in order to turn on these new devices. And that's the big push. Things like network slicing, analytics everywhere, addition of visual cloud functionality everywhere, as well as that flexibility to be able to kind of breathe in and out. The service implementation based on when it's needed, where it's needed. So that's among others, that's the topics we'll be focusing in today. We've had a couple of prep sessions with this team, and we agreed to make sure that one, we focus on really good topics, and also we have a good healthy debate and a bit of friendly fire between our panelists today to make sure we have a good experience for yourself when you listen to this webinar. So over to you, Tony. Do you want to tee us up for introductions, please, and walk us through topics?
So thank you, Dan. And if I could add my welcome to everyone to this panel session. As Dan said, we've got a great group of panelists here. Just if I very quickly introduce myself, I'm Tony Lavender from Plum Consulting. I've done quite a lot of work around 5G in recent years. My background has been in technology policy and regulation, and 5G seems to have raised just as many issues in that area, if not more, than any other generation of mobile. So it's been keeping me pretty busy on both technology and that. And maybe if I just very quickly get the other panelists to introduce themselves. So starting with Francesca.
Hello, hi everyone, good afternoon, and thanks for inviting me to this panel. I'm Francesca Serravalle, I'm the Emerging Technology Director at Colt, and I have a strong focus on 5G and Edge because we believe that bundled with our intelligent connectivity fiber-based portfolio, we're able to help our customers to go through their digital transformation journey. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Maziar?
Yes, hello everyone, and I'm thankful for the organizer for inviting me to this panel. My name is Maziar Nekovee. I'm a professor of telecom and mobile technologies at University of Sussex, and I'm also vice chair of Network 2020 European Technology Platform, which is and my focus is on 5G architecture and enablers, in particular for the sort of vertical sectors such as manufacturing, robotic, and health.
Thank you very much. And I think Daniel Lynch has already introduced himself. So why don't we get underway? And when I was thinking through the panel, I thought, well, there's a 5G. While it's another mobile system, as I think you've already seen from the slides Dan put up, there's a different philosophy in 5G. There are architectural differences. We've seen the spectrum debate because like any mobile system, it needs more spectrum, which always gets an emotive response. We're also seeing quite a lot of debate about how it's going to be used. We're all familiar with the enhanced mobile broadband case, but there are other use cases around machines and ultra reliable low latency connections and so on. Different delivery models. We've had quite a lot of talk about Industry 4.0, private LTE implementations, and not least sitting behind this, because this is the thing that really determines whether any technology coming to market works or not, is the business case. But why don't we start right at the front of that list on architecture? And Maziar, I think you are the prime suspect for architecture. So we're on a journey with 5G. architecture. At the moment, we have non-standalone. We will move at some stage to standalone. Edge has already been mentioned. We're in the sort of release 16 domain now, 3GPP release 16, but quite a lot of things come in release 17 as well. So just where are we on the architecture journey with 5G?
Well, I think, as you mentioned, Tony, there are a number of innovative components in 5G that set it really aside from previous generation, network slicing being one, of course, but also the emergence of 5G private networks or 5G private networks and mobile edge computing are extremely important, especially when it comes to applications beyond enhanced mobile broadband. So if you're looking at areas such as Industry 4.0 manufacturing, and I'm also looking in the health, those are areas that we really need this component in order to open the markets for 5G. So I think these are really important components. The other thing that I think is very interesting is that unlike previous generation, 5G also allows non-standard radio access technologies such as Wi-Fi to connect and authenticated by 5G core, which has also some benefits in future applications.
So 5G core is interesting, isn't it? Because we often focus on the RAN when we talk about mobile systems, but 5G core is designed to be scalable and virtualized in a way that we've not seen on any other mobile system.
Yeah, correct. And I believe it depends on what type of use case we're looking at. If we're looking at enhanced mobile broadband, probably it's going to be mainly non-standalone, as we have seen from most of the rollout of 5G from MNO, that they're focusing on the consumer market segment and using 5G more as a marketing initiative for now. But we know that the real revenue comes from 5G for enterprise use case. And we have seen that, there is some momentum here through 5G private networks, as Maziar was mentioning. And that's because most of the vertical are embracing digital. They're really changing and innovating their operational and business activity to become data-driven, and COVID-19 has also accelerated that initiative as well. But here, and I think here government around the world are doing a great job to really try and drive demand and stimulate the ecosystem development around 5G use case for smart verticals through incubation and acceleration initiative. If you think, for example, what the UK 5G and the UK government has done through the UK 5G test bed around UK, which are very use case driven. You have something for mobility and connected car, for Industry 4.0, for smart health, for smart children, smart agriculture. It's very important to really develop the ecosystem around the full ICT stack for really driving the demand and unleashing the business benefit.
Just following up on that, Francesca, it's we're in the process of implementing release 16 at the moment. How long will it be before sort of some of the features of release 16 come to market? Because really what we're seeing at the moment is actually release 15, I guess.
Yeah, it's mainly release 15. I think release 16 for what we are seeing, talking with our 5G partner ecosystem, as you know, we are not a mobile service provider, we're fixed service providers. So for what we are seeing, release 16 will come next year, and phased approach, some capability maybe by Q2, some other capability, time sensitive networks is more by end of the year. So it really depends, but it's gonna take one more year, I think, before seeing.
Yeah. So we're at a relatively early point in the 5G journey in that sense, I think. And maybe just very quickly moving on to Daniel, you meant, coming back to this question of architecture and what's different in 5G. One of the things that's different in 5G is MEC or Edge, whatever you want to call it. How much flexibility do you think, Daniel, users of 5G will have in terms of the way they can implement that, thinking from a point of view of service innovation?
Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah, I think the MEC, the whole MEC question has been hanging over the industry now for a while, certainly in 4G. And I know it's enshrined in 3GPP now with the specification, but it's still one of those things that needs to prove itself out. And number one, this kind of constant, you know, what's the business case, you know, versus build it and they will come, question marks, and what's the value of an edge application versus the application in the cloud. And I think the right now, if I look at the release 15 spec and the focus really just on cell phone, and you know that the caching app doesn't really do it, right? Caching doesn't do the justification, because if you have an edge, it's additional capex, additional opex. I think first thing first, to lay the right foundation, you do need a cloud platform. So I think that's where the industry has moved in with Open RAN, Cloud RAN, just TIP, ORAN, all the industry, all the comm service providers, the RAN vendors, the disruptors, the OEMs have really stepped up and said, well, actually, first and foremost, we can deliver a cloud platform. Now, that cloud platform will be optimized for the network function, in this case, RAN. So that's like the very first foundational. You know, it's cost, it's power, it's easy to manage. It meets the kind of capex budget right now. So that's the first, and then you can start slowly adding in additional services. The one that, and for sure, I think Francesca is absolutely right. You know, release 16 is a ways out in terms of being really deployed in any sort of volume. That will drive a lot of demand for edge application, because by the nature of it, you know, that low latency, the massive amount of data. How do you want to get the answer from the server back very, very quickly? The one I'm super interested in right now, in like when we look forward to 21, is AI. AI in terms of that RIC. What's the value? Can let's a bit of compute at the edge. What can AI do in terms of increasing wireless KPIs? Again, that's a no service. That again, a bit more kind of cell phone focused, but it says this is an app. This is an app that can drive up the KPIs of a network. Now you've got let's pick a UK operator who has a AI enabled RAN who drives up wireless KPIs. And that differentiates them versus the competing operators. So I think that subtle things like that will really get the ball rolling early days, and then the release 16 is what's needed for the broader set of apps.
That's interesting. Just one more sort of question. I don't know who wants to pick this one up on architecture, but of course, one of the things that's very embedded in 5G architecture is a security architecture. And a lot has been said about security and 5G and relationship between application security and what the network offers. And of course, things like edge are seen as potential vulnerabilities. Are you, as sort of developers or users of 5G, happy with the way the security development is going?
I'll take that. I think that this is quite an important topic and something that I don't think we have a clear answer now. So what we know is that 5G will bring a new challenge, because the network is disaggregated, because the network is exposed through the API exposure, is exposed to the application, because it will serve new devices. So we have a new thread from the device layer through the application layer. The network becomes fully virtualized as well and disaggregated and very edge-centric, and that will create a bigger attack surface. And the landscape is becoming more complex and really holistic across the full architecture. So when we look at 5G as an enabler of IoT services, we really need to really need to take into account that also a risk in the 5G networks and the 5G connectivity network is going to create a disruption to all those digital services, which could be, for example, very critical services, public safety. So there is a clear focus from government as well to really incubate a holistic security framework. We really need to have a security capability across the entire stack, from the infrastructure to the connectivity to the platform and application. So developing those best practice and a new operational model as well. We need, telemetry to really do security monitoring, AI to really do security threat detection as well. So all of this will require, again, an ecosystem-driven approach, and it will require some incubation activity. UK 5G has launched a 5G security group, which I'm the vice chairman of. We are looking of leveraging on 5G testbed in UK to really develop a best practice per use case.
Okay, that's interesting. Perhaps now, given we have other topics on the agenda as well, we should move on to spectrum. And a lot of what we've been seeing here in Europe, for example, is around C-band 3.4 to 3.8 gigahertz. It's a different story, for example, where 5G has been launched in the United States due to difficulties accessing the C-band spectrum, and there we've seen more millimeter wave. Similar issues in Asia with satellite use of C-band, so we've seen less C-band available and some millimeter wave coming to market. There's a couple of questions here, which are, first one of which is, how does the spectrum roadmap for 5G really work? Does it really matter which of these bands you launch 5G in first? Are they fungible in that extent, to that extent? Or should we also be looking for other spectrum bands, particularly in the mid-band, that can be refarmed to 5G? I don't know, Maziar, do you want to have a go at that one first?
Yes, Tony, I think one of my passions has been always spectrum, previously in industry also. Interesting, I just jumped off from a workshop on spectrum in US when they were saying that, actually having this C-band was great in Europe and elsewhere, and with millimeter wave, they're a bit struggling in US in terms of a density deployment. So coming back to the spectrum, I think what we are seeing now, and that is very interesting in terms of future applications, that Germany already, and UK now, and Japan are allocating spectrum in C-band for this sort of a vertical applications as manufacturing and others. It was news just that there were 80 licenses issued already in Germany for this sort of applications. And I think this is a very interesting thing to watch because there are two questions. First of all, would be enough spectrum? Is that a scalable approach? If we realize that by some estimates, this sort of manufacturing and others are going to derive a lot of market in the future, and therefore they would need lots and lots of spectrum. But also we see that spectrum sharing, maybe in some elementary forms, is going to be a very important thing to address this sort of a localized spectrum requirements in order to do that. And on top of that, I think millimeter wave spectrum obviously being used by, say, Verizon for fixed wireless access, so it's not really still mobile broadband. We'll be seeing hotspots at some stage. But again, because of the this poor propagation and also the need for beamforming is an advantage when you use that indoor, and that will enable sharing, for example, other applications such as video analytics in manufacturing, that sort of application. They need large bandwidth for warehouses and manufacturing, dense deployment millimeter wave. So I think millimeter spectrum sharing also is an interesting proposition to look at in future.
Yeah, I'll come back to sharing in a minute, but I just wanted to ask Francesca, you're not Colt, you're not really a spectrum holder in that sense of mobile spectrum. You sit a little bit further upstream on the supply chain. How does the spectrum question affect you as an operator?
Well, I think it affects in a positive way. And the reason for that is that we really believe that we are very well positioned to really address the digital opportunity of our customer. As you know, we have an enterprise customer base, and across span really different verticals: banking, retail, manufacturing, real estate, media. And we believe that the fact that most of the regulators have launched innovative spectrum license through, sharing a localized policy, that has created an ecosystem really around 5G private networks, which we can leverage on. We can really have working together with this 5G private ecosystem. We already have a 5G cloud native core networks. So it really helps really to deliver a 5G private network standalone, which is key for the capability, like the service-based architecture, the network slicing, but also from security point of view, because most of the security enhancement in 5G comes from the 5G core. So for us, it's a good thing because we believe it helps speed up the ecosystem in 5G private networks for a full standalone deployment without relying on the deployment roadmap of the MNOs, because that, I think, it will take some time for them to have a full standalone network.
Yes, and their incentives, I think, will be different. Daniel, as Intel as a sort of not native spectrum user in the mobile sense, although you have plenty of experience in other spectrum bands, do you think governments and regulators actually get it on the 5G question?
Yeah, certainly 5G is more problematic than 4G in terms of per country, per geo, what is the right spectrum, and then the layers of complexity on top of that, right? So from millimeter wave, I think Maziar, you called out really well about the use cases of millimeter wave. I'm not sure has the market closed out on the opinion of millimeter wave beyond fixed wireless access. We know it is used for mobility in spots, but is it good enough? Is the DSS plus millimeter wave architecture, is that delivering a good service or not? Then you get into the mid-band spaces, and okay, so you get this really big bump in terms of your capacity per cell, but the cost per cell goes way up as well, because it's quite a huge radio head to do in that massive MIMO, whatever it is, 32 TRX or 64 TRX. That's big chunking piece of hardware that pop up a pole. And I was actually doing a webinar a couple of weeks ago with a steel company who that's 5G for them, is reinforcing all these towers to take the weight, and the tower doesn't become a kite and just flies off. So the cost and power and the infrastructure, as well as the cost of the software side for mid-band, and then mid-band indoor, clearly, there's not that many easy spots in your room that you want to put a big massive MIMO radio head. So you're talking about mid-band standard MIMO, but because there's less movement, you are getting high capacity. So we see in China, the big operators push forward on mid-band standard MIMO quite a lot. I think that's going to be a big part of 2021 rollout. We've yet to see that really take hold in North America, and Europe might be next year as well. And then the narrowband stuff, it's kind of, that low band refarming of 3G spectrum. That's kind of like 4G just repurposed, but a bit more efficient, right? A bit more bits per hertz is better. So there's value there from an operator to invest. So yes, it's across the gambit, and our job obviously to make the chips, the enabling software, so that the builders of that equipment, it's agnostic. It's just a pipeline, and whatever, it's a different type of radio head. The flow is differently. And then of course for us, looking beyond that, then it's where does 6G take us? Are we going centimeter wave? Are we going another order of magnitude MIMO? How are we going to realize that? So that whole research is starting to kick off now, which is I think is going to be exciting a lot of our technologists as well.
Yeah, and I think it's like many of these things, isn't it? Coming back to what sort of the title of this session, delivering innovation for telco transformation. If you're not doing the research now, the transformation won't be there in 10 years' time.
Yeah, exactly, absolutely.
Yeah, so I've seen a few raised eyebrows about people talking about 6G, but if you're not going to come to a dead halt, you've got to be doing that innovation. So actually coming back to sort of delivering innovation, what we're talking about here. I don't know who wants to go first on this one, but it feels like with 5G, there's an awful lot of moving parts to delivering innovation, and ultimately, of course, this has to come to market and customers have to buy it. How well do customers actually understand what is going on at the moment? I'm talking about two different types of customers here. You've got the ones who build and the infrastructure and operate the services, and then you've got the end users of the services as well. So, my guess is the ones who build and operate the infrastructure probably do understand quite a lot of what's going on, but what is the general level of understanding of the innovation that's taking place? And, are people catching on now to the 5G story and how it can potentially help them? I don't know who wants to go first on that.
I can go first. I'm happy to go first. So as you mentioned, 5G brings in opportunity for innovation, but it brings also lots of complexity. And that's because it's mainly, if we look especially on the enterprise market segment, it really requires a solution and ecosystem-driven approach. Just think on any digital transformation initiative. It's not just only about 5G. You need edge, because every smart vertical solution, it will need some kind of distributed network, some distributed telco cloud, and distributed cloud services as well. So it's really part of a broader ecosystem. There is a great effort in building the right synergy across partners within the full ICT stack. And we have different type of edge, and if we look on any just generic on an on-premise edge for a smart verticals, we'll probably need to host some 5G function, whether it's RAN or also core CUD, virtual CUDU, but also core. We'll need to host some telco workload, some digital services, whether it's a virtual firewall, an SD-WAN, virtual WAN optimization. We may need to host some data for compliancy reasons. It might need to host some AI capability to really drive some local inference and some intelligence locally, but also some cloud stack to really leverage on the cloud services of the hyperscaler, including the app development environment, as well as on the analytics capability. On top of that, every vertical is going to have its own stack. So for you to talk about smart retailers, then it's one stack. Smart manufacturing will create another one. And it's also important, really, who is going to create the right bundle probably will be SI, because the SIs, they have the domain knowledge per verticals. For example, take Industry 4.0, they really have the guys who are able to really talk at business level and operational level, and then help translating those in technical level. If you go and talk to a verticals, it's not about a technology selling anymore. It's about selling the outcome, the value that will come from this technology bundling in addressing their operational and business challenge. So I think, incubation, acceleration program that we are seeing, driven either by government in collaboration with the industry, we're doing some incubation and acceleration programming itself are really key, to really deliver this end-to-end solution, to co-create with technology partners, go-to-market partners, with hyperscaler as well, and then operationalizing and monetizing.
Thank you for that. And Daniel, I know when we talked about this, this session, we had a debate about, well, who moves first on a lot of this? And is this a bit of a, dealing with this complexity and actually getting some of this going? Is it a bit of a chicken and egg situation? So who's the chicken here and what's the egg?
Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah, we do face a challenge for sure, Tony, that I think there is a definite scope for some of the leading operators to come in with, some big operators to come in with almost an app store or some sort of platform to fill a pretty significant void. If not, then that will clearly be filled by the larger CSPs, and we're back to this over the top complaints again that we had on 4G, right? So yeah, I think it's going to take time. Some of the Francesca, some of the things that I would see in the industry, right, is that there's a vertical, and everybody gets excited about it. We're chasing after it. It's a vertical deal, but it ends up like one factory floor for one set of one small company. A lot of investment, and the ROI for that supply chain just isn't there yet. So it's a big challenge for the industry. It's like, okay, hang on, we did 18 months of effort here to stand up this solution, and how many chips are you going to buy? How many boxes? How many software licenses? How do you mean it's just 5? Is that 5 million? Isn't that what you're supposed to say? So yeah, it is a big thing. I think for us, Tony, and on the chip side, we need to do better. We need to make sure our data center stuff, cloud stuff, is more accessible in terms of software enabling. It's lower power, lower cost. That's the goal of the silicon industry. We need to do that, and hardware providers work with the software ecosystem. So we have to do our bit. I think the operators need to recognize that the void that's there and step into that. Certainly the big ones, the big ones will have the staying power. And then within it, then it's just education as well. And I see some of our comm service provider kind of friends, we're partners with them, and they're doing a really good job of going. A lot of stuff is within the IT groups within these leading operators, and they're doing a lot of good effort to kind of go to the opcos and educating them. So yeah, listen, I know it's different. I know it's going to spend a bit of time, but this is the value. Invest in it now. Upskill, understand the different hardware. Because this is what we will need to be competitive in 4 or 5 years time. So there's a lot of kind of groundwork, but still big voids that needs to be filled.
Yeah. And Maziar, coming back to the question of cost. Traditionally in a mobile system or a wireless system, the biggest cost volume relationship is on the RF part of the network. As we go into sort of these technologies, they all seem inherently more complex. How do we manage that sort of the radio level, that complexity cost curve?
Thanks. That's a very good question. I also want to add my voice to Francesca's in terms of the value of this sort of test beds and innovation hubs in order to get the verticals into the game. I've been focusing quite a bit on speaking to NHS trusts in Sussex, particularly a lot on 5G and IoT and educating. They're very interested. I think when you do the math for them, the cost of deployment is obviously an issue, especially when it comes to the radio access network. I mean, the RAN is obviously very sophisticated, and 5G RAN with massive MIMO and beamforming, all of that. But then I think there's a price tag for all of that. And just to also come something good, I think Danielle Francesca also mentioned is that when you talk to, say, a hospital or NHS, they are after a full solution. Yeah, so they are interested in data analytics, they're interested in AI, and network is a sort of a means to that end. I think this opportunity to me that be able to have this sort of private networks, to have private cores, virtualized cores, either running locally or on clouds, that helps, of course, because that reduces the cost of core reserve application. And the other thing is that when we are looking, and you look at many applications, you think, well, you can do this actually with Wi-Fi or even LoRa for a lot of IoT applications. We don't necessarily always need a 5G RAN for that. And that may sound a bit controversial, but I think if we allow 5G to be a sort of a orchestrating network rather than focus on the radio that basically picks up data, authenticates, secure, goes through core, does all these fantastic things, that will help to reduce the cost of initial costs for verticals such as health in order to get into the 5G. And then in the longer term, when the benefits are really tangible, you can upgrade then to all the fantastic, top-notch 5G RAN. So that's that sort of thinking that I've been developing, talking to especially the health sector.
So the question of substitutes is interesting. Indeed, 4G is a substitute for 5G under some circumstances. So how does one deal with someone, a customer, enterprise perhaps, who's on a technology journey and says, well, I just want to stick with 4G for now? Francesca.
Well, I think, we will see a variety of deployment scenario. Some will be Wi-Fi based, some will be 5G based, and some will be 4G based. And, I think with the time, everyone will move on 5G as the business case becomes more clear for them as well. But most of the 5G of the indoor private networks are really 4G because of the maturity, readiness. Now, from our side, we're really working from an innovation perspective in driving the demand of 5G use case. And the reason why we're doing that is because we believe we can leverage on the transformation program that we have done ourselves. Now, I think for operators, for service providers to really grab this opportunity of 5G for enterprise, they need to be ready. To be ready, need to be that they have transformed their network to become fully service-driven, where you really can create a network slice. So you can provision network resources and network function based on specific IoT services. And we can see that the services SLA across the different verticals are going to be very, very different. We have really started our transformation program back in 2016. We have virtualized our networks. We have automated our operation in terms of the network management, but also the service life cycle. And we have cloudified our services. All the network services and connectivity services can be delivered on demand through our portal. And that's why we feel, we are ready now to go one step further, leverage on bundle our intelligent connectivity, leverage on this transformation program that we have done with 5G to really help driving the demand of 5G use case for verticals. What we think is needed here to enable the business case for the enterprise is to co-innovate with them. So launching like incubation program where they go beyond of POC. It's not just a technology proof, it's really bringing the partner ecosystem together and proving the value of the end-to-end stack through our users, through a vertical, a customer of ours that will really drive the requirement. I think the operationalizing this, but also the monetization part, this is something we will work on during those incubation and acceleration program.
That's interesting. We've talked a lot about enterprise markets, but Daniel,
Can I add to that? I'm interested in the other panelists' view as well. The whole kind of Wi-Fi versus license spectrum. I just, in my own head, right? I just was explained to me way back when I kind of joined the RAN radio access segment. One of our principal engineers is Dan. You know, IEEE from the ground up thinks about cost, right? That cost is a massive factor. 3GPP, it's all about quality. So that's kind of just how to characterize both, and maybe unfairly, okay, maybe giving too much credit or unfair, but that type of mindset, and my own personal experiences of, and maybe I'm biased, of going through my Wi-Fi at home, my experience of Wi-Fi traveling worldwide, either airports or trains or wherever, and when I've got a free license spectrum option and I'm using my phone, that's my preferred approach always. Yeah, to be fair, it has a little bit of a power delta, right? When you use license spectrum, using more radio power on my UE side, but the experience is far superior. And that's just like on a 4G. I just can't see. I can see coexisting, like Francesca said. I think that you could have lots of technology from 5G from the outset stated that. But those unique services that operators and enterprise providers look to realize, I just can't see the Wi-Fi culture being able to deliver on those things. It just, for me, I'm chatting to Maziar, you mentioned Germany. Germany's looking at a lot of that industrial segments, and they're looking to replace cables. Okay, so like in the robotics market, say, okay, actually the mobility restrictions due to cabling in the manufacturing floor is a big problem. That's a business challenge. If we remove those, we're good. Now, are we removing those with Wi-Fi? I don't know. I don't know. I'd like your guys' views on that. I struggle.
I was going to say it's an interesting question, and we've looked at.
Can I just jump in?
Yeah. Just give me 1 minute. I was gonna raise one other question.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
This is where the fight starts.
So, Wi-Fi 6 has been, shall we say, heralded as the thing that solves many of the issues with legacy Wi-Fi. But is that really true if Wi-Fi 6 ends up working in a UE environment with legacy Wi-Fi devices as well? So I think that's another aspect of this. Yeah. But yeah, Maziar, go ahead. You wanted to.
Yeah. I mean, we were looking for a bit of a fire here, but my heart is in 5G. Obviously, I've developed a lot of 5G millimeter wave standard, and before that, I did work in unlicensed when I was at BT. So, but you see that when it comes to ultra reliable, ultra low latency, deterministic communication, that's another part of the puzzle in this sort of a industry 4.0 application. There, you really need this sort of or automotive some applications. And then you see also that these are actually the verticals that are in forefront of 5G deployment with associations that are also working with 3GPP, 5G AA, 5G Industrial Alliance. So there are indication that they really see value for that. But I just want to come back to what Francesca also mentioned, that I think probably we'll have a coexistence and multiple radio access technologies, both 3GPP and non-3GPP, at least initially. And in some areas, you're looking at, for example, data analytics. Data is a very big part also in manufacturing and health, monitoring, that sort of applications. They could be maybe done best with the cheapest available. But when it comes to ultra low latency, ultra reliable, then you need this really 5G RANs.
Yeah, no, I think that's a view that a lot of people are forming. Francesca.
Yeah, and I was saying that I totally agree with what Maziar said and Daniel as well. And the fact that, you know, the German regulators announced that they have awarded, I think, around 90 licenses already to private verticals. That is telling really that there is demand for 5G for whenever there are those, you know, critical IoT use case that needs the ultra low latency capability of 5G and the extra security and that 5G will bring.
Yeah. So just sort of, we've talked a lot about enabling 5G. As always, if you were sitting in the shoes of a government, one of the things a government will look for is what are the barriers that government ought to tackle to bring these sorts of things to market. So Daniel, what's your view on the barriers at the moment? What's really inhibiting things?
Yeah, I think that's more of a yeah, right now I don't see the challenge at the government level. You know, Tony, if you think about it worldwide, it seems to be going along quite nicely actually. Yeah, some of the government involvement, there's some negative stuff obviously in the supply chain with some of the global politics going on, that's has a pretty big impact on some suppliers, and yeah, that's a challenge. But no, I think by and large, like you mentioned there about spectrum allocation, that seems to be going on quite nicely. Yeah, no, I don't see the same big issues that we were presented with a couple of years ago. Some of the things that I think you might start seeing as 5G in the kind of medium term as 5G matures is the rollout of small cells. Right now, I'd say that the vast majority of 5G rollout is either millimeter wave, where mid-band spectrum isn't available, or it's, you know, narrowband rollout and mid-band rollout. And as the micro macro base stations roll out, you're looking at smaller potential for smaller small cells, and that's an area where I think more local government help will be needed, where it's that relaxation or the expectation that a leasing and the cost per physical site, it's not the same, you know, that the operator isn't making the same amount of money per site of a small cell that is a macro cell, so that relaxation on tariffs and costs per small cell site, I think that's going to be a big area where but I don't see that in the next year, maybe in a 2 to 3 year horizon, that's something that people will have to sort out. And there's a lot of lobbying going on to try and relax those tariffs. That's probably the one obvious one for me.
Yeah. At the moment, I actually can't see any audience questions. But if there are audience questions, please let us have them. But Maziar, any views on governments and blockages?
Yes, well, it's now time to put my academic hat on and talk about 6G. We are actually doing quite a bit of research on 6G, focusing on terahertz communication and also native AI for RAN and core design. Now, I think from the government, and we have seen already announcement from Finland, other places, 6G white papers from Samsung, Ericsson, Intel, I think others. So I think from the government side, I like to see some of the R&D expenditure moves towards sort of a next generation 6G because of the timelines that obviously, if we want to have any impact, we need to start quite early, as we learned from 5G. So yeah, I think that's something the government can, or governments can consider in sort of 6G investment. The EU is starting its smart network and services initiative in Horizon Europe in 2021. So I think it's really a time to think very carefully about R&D expenditure for 6G. And 6G is going to be even more, you know, it will have a lot of AI, a lot of more on the computer science, cloud computing. So, and also, you know, define a very well-balanced portfolio of R&D investment in 6G in discussion with the R&D community.
And Francesca, barriers, are there any?
I think barriers, I think there is still a need of evangelizing. We know that it's really important to drive the demand, and we know that government are already done so much and really investing in 5G test bed per use case. But I think that still needs a lot of evangelization to really show the business case for the vertical. Helping developing the ecosystem around it, because as I say, any digital services will need 5G as well, fiber, as well as IoT to sense, to create a digital twin of something, but the AI as well to be really able to extrapolate intelligence from that. And I think developing best practice, security best practice is going to be key as well, because it has to be first and foremost for most of the smart vertical initiative.
Yeah. So thanks for that. I know we're coming to the end of the session, so I think it'd be good to just, based on what you've heard, what would you say to the audience? What would your closing thoughts be? So Francesca, if you want to go first.
I'm a great believer in 5G. I think 5G will really transform, society and enterprises. And I believe that really an ecosystem-driven approach is going to be key for really enabling and accelerating this solution outcome-driven proposition across the full ICT stack.
Yeah, and will the business cases be there?
It will be the business case. That's where the incubation and acceleration program are there for,
Yeah. And Maziar, what are your?
Yes, I'm also very excited about this brave new world 5G is going into all these new sectors. I think the timing is extremely great because we have a clash of new technologies. So we have 5G, we have AI coming all together. So there's still a lot of excitement to see in 5G, and I think the businesses will also follow. So that's my view.
I remember sort of just winding the clock back, say getting on for 20 years when we were in the dot-com boom, then bust. We were talking about the clash of the net heads and bell heads. Have we moved on from that position? What do you think, Maziar?
I'm not sure if I can comment on that.
Yeah, I think it's right. I mean, the G does bring in not just new technology, but new understanding of our market. I remember getting the first 4G primer and going, where's the voice? How do you mean there's no voice? But isn't everything voice? So I think that's what we're seeing right now is this, you're going from a data only 4G to a service oriented network, and just everybody within the market ecosystem wrapping their head around that in terms of what does that mean, how to realize that, how to build new partnerships, new relationships. So yeah, I'm with Maziar and Francesca. I'm certainly excited about what this means in terms of technology, business innovation. It's going to be an exciting few years ahead of us. But one of the interesting things, guys, is that that it has been an unrelenting rollout of 5G this year. Despite 5G is about mobility, ultra mobility, right? During a period where we have been at our least mobile. So if 2020 has been such a strong 5G year, what happens when mobility starts kicking back in and we start getting on the road and meeting and greeting people and traveling? So yeah, that's where I think 5G will really start shining. Next 2021, 22 is when we get back on that road.
And Francesca, I'm aware you have to go, so thank you for being on the panel.
Thank you for inviting me. Thanks to my panelists for this insightful discussion.
Thanks, bye.
I'm also cutting off Tony and Danielle. It was a pleasure to join.
Thanks, Maziar. Thanks, Francesca.
Thank you very much.
So, Daniel, are we finally at the point where we have an IT stack with a radio on the end?
Yeah, I think we are. I think we are. I think it is yeah, the RAN is quite complex. It'll always be very complex, but the ability to pop a CPU next to a radio head, that era has dawned. Yeah.
So it's a brave new world in that sense. I think at that
Sure is.
point, I'll hand to you to do the close.
Yeah, I know. I think we're good. I think we talked a good discussion about our the architecture, the journey that the whole network is undergoing. We talked about a spectrum, implications to spectrum. We talked about implications to security. You know, the threats, but also the opportunities for a stronger, secure network. We talked with supply chain. I like your chicken and egg story. I'll use that one, Tony. And we talked about 5G businesses and our excitement for the market. So yeah, thank you to all the panelists, to you, Tony, Dan, for cheering us, and everybody listening in, and those who are listening after the live cast. Thank you, guys.